All right. Hi, everyone. Today I have Chris Grosso with me. Here's his book, Indie Spiritualist. And I asked Chris to come to the podcast a long, long time ago and then floated away into Pleasant's creative la la land until I came back because we're doing this little series called Boy Crazy because every other um, guest has been a woman, and we run a woman school for wellness and spirituality and health and Ayurveda. And I have met and obsessed with a handful of really awesome, interesting, integrated men that I want to share with the world because yes, there are a lot of things going on in our country that are very important and we need to talk about very honestly and authentically. And we also need to bring voices of men who are doing the work in different ways.
I really appreciate that. I don't know if I can jump in here, but I
Yes.
love that you're doing. I smirked because it was not at you. I host my own podcast over on Ram Dass's network, and I go through phases where it'll be just like women I interview for, and not intentionally. It just lines up like I have 10 women I interview in a row, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to make this just strictly about women. And then again, inadvertently, it's like 10 men, and it's like, oh, so I just go in and try to mix them up in the queue or ask them like, look, I don't want to run 10 female, 10 male, like let's mix it up. But anyways, that's why I smirked. It had nothing to do with
Yeah, no, I love
and I
it.
think that's great.
I
And
think sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, lastly, I appreciate that you see me in that light because I couldn't agree more, and I couldn't what's the word I'm looking for? I like to think of myself on a good day as a champion for women's rights. And it's so important to me, and it's something I'm always very vocal about. And I don't stand for any kind of sexism. It's just, I work with youth a lot, do numerous workshops, and over the years have had to become very cognizant of the way I address particular residents there, and completely respect that. I've had friends of all sexual genres since I was like 13, so I've never had any issue with that. And that's something going back, like as far as high school, I used to literally get in fistfights over my friends that were of a different color or a different religion or a different sexual background. That's deeply ingrained in me. So not to stray, but I
No, it's the whole
it means a
point.
lot. Well, thank you for
Yeah.
recognizing that in me. So thanks.
And I found you online on Instagram probably a few years ago and started seeing Indie Spiritualist as a brand in the, I
Not
mean,
by my choice.
I bet I can imagine, but that is the title of your first book.
It is.
A
Go
no
look at my
bullshit.
Instagram now and let's see how much branded it is, really.
Right. But then is your website that also?
So that, yes, it really
Yeah.
just very quickly,
Yeah. Yeah.
the website started in 2010, and
Okay.
it was when I was first getting interested, not first, but like more seriously interested in spirituality. I'd been interested in it as far back as like 2004, but
Mm-hmm.
really like getting interested around 2008. And then come 2010, I'm meeting a lot of people like myself, which surprised me, like people that liked punk and hardcore and metal and hip hop and all things like eclectic and weird and artsy. Um, and so I'm like, oh, there must be magazines or websites that like curate all of this material, and I couldn't find any. So in the spirit of DIY punk ethics, I'm like, I'm going to do it myself, and started that as a kind of a breeding ground where I could interview spiritual teachers and musicians and actors and all sorts of people, skateboarders that I looked up to, and host in one place. So it was not with the intention of, I wasn't writing anything myself. It was just interviews with people. I just wanted to create a home base where people like me could go and check it out. And the original title of this book, as it was shopped, was called "Watch It Burn," which was an ode to a punk band, Cast Iron Hike, or more hardcore, I guess. That was the name of one of their records. So we shopped it as that, and the publishers were interested, but not with that title, because who's going to want to buy a book called Watch It Burn on spirituality? So speaking,
Well, actually, that sounds freaking awesome.
thank you. I that's why I wanted to name it that. But that's why the book was Indie Spiritual. So like you have the website of the name, it's kind of branded, and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
word is like, oh, chills
yeah,
when I hear it. But I
yeah.
get it. So there's just a quick backstory as to the name of it. So
Well, and how it like fits together. Listen, in order to get the message out there sometimes, and not out of, there's no lack of integrity or
right,
humility
right,
or kindness, but sometimes people have to say, well, what is that? And how can I wrap my head around it? And
right.
I don't usually see people writing about loving kindness who look like this person.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's what I'm super attracted to, is finding a variety of voices and colors and sizes and shapes and
Yeah.
tattoos and non-tattoos and all of the things to
Yeah.
say this is human. These are human practices.
Right. So well said.
They've
Yeah.
been branded for white, elite, wealthy, privilege, in all of I could keep going with that list. But one of the things I love to do is because I look like that and often act like that, that I'm like, wait, this is really for everyone, even though I don't look like everyone. So how do we do that? And how do we kind of spread those messages?
Right there with you. And that, like, the funny thing is, Indie Spiritualist, that was just a play on words. It meant
Yeah.
nothing. Like, I was driving to work one day. I used to work with kids. I still do, but in a different capacity at this time. And I'm thinking about, what am I going to name this website? And it hit me while I was driving. Like, I love independent culture, and it's also going to be focusing on spirituality, hence Indie Spiritualist. What When it really hit me was like when the book's coming out, it's like, because indie spirituals didn't mean anything to me. It literally was just a play on words. And then I saw a female in Canada got it tattooed on her, and I'm like, wow, this is becoming a thing. And then my publisher's like, so you've got to explain what that is. And I'm
Mhm.
like, it's nothing. It's just words. But then, like, I thought about it, and I kind of looked at the feedback I was getting from people, and articles I'd been writing even prior to that for other websites. And I guess I put out kind of my own definition. Definition is not even the right word, but my own understanding of
Yeah.
it. Yet at the same time saying, this is my understanding. They're words. I don't care. Like, I love songs where people write lyrics where they mean something to them, but they're abstract and they don't tell the listener or their fans what they mean. So they can make their own meaning of that. And that's kind of how I view Indie Spiritualist, is like, make it whatever you want it to be, whatever works for you. So
And how many books do you have now?
3.
Three.
Yeah, 3 published. I have pieces in a whole bunch of books. I've written
Yeah.
towards for a whole bunch, but 3 of my own. Yeah.
And so Indie Spiritualist was first and then came.
Everything Mine came out the year after that, and
Okay.
then 2 years after that, my most recent book, which was last year, Dead Set on Living.
Okay.
So it was Beyond Words and Hatria for Indie Spiritualist, Sounds True for Everything Mind,
Oh.
and then Simon and Schuster for Dead Set on Living. And that's where things are at right now. And I am
And
working on new stuff, but I can't
yeah.
like
Yeah, yeah. Tell us a little bit about how you see that. Are they like a trilogy? Do they follow one another? Tell me a little bit about, I've read Indie Spiritualist and not the next two. So
right. So they are not. Indie Spirituals and Everything Mind, kind of, they were written. I had, like, before Indie Spirituals was even published, I had half of Everything Mind written already. It was just continuing. The way Everything Mind and Indie Spirituals are written are very similar in that, like, I use my own life as kind of the thread um,
Mhm.
on my own, I throw myself under the bus. I use myself as my own test subject, but it's not about me. It's like, yes, parts are about me, but only in the sense of, here's ways that I've fallen in life, and here are practices and means and teachings and methods that have helped me get back up.
Mhm.
And then I
Mhm.
fell again, and this worked. And,
Mhm.
they all include different, I don't just talk about the practices, I share them. And so
Mhm.
those 2 books, in a way, um, I feel like there will be a third that will
Mhm.
kind of coincide with that, because, like I said, Everything Mind, even though that came out in 2015, that was done being written in 2014. And so I haven't really written a book about, like, personally,
Mm-hmm.
even though my third book does talk a bit about my own journey, the third book, Dead Set on Living, changes in the fact that each chapter is a narrative conversation,
Mm.
because I'd suffered a relapse, and one that literally basically killed me. Like, I'm so lucky that I lived through it. And so each chapter is a narrative conversation with people from all different backgrounds. Gabor Mate, who's a
Yeah.
addiction expert,
Amazing.
Ram Dass, Sharon Salzberg, Damien Eccles, JP Sears, like all
Mm.
these different people that have these different perspectives on well-being and health and healing. And it's essentially exploring not just drugs and alcohol, but why do we return to the self-defeating behaviors, whatever they
Yeah.
are? What's going on? So we're looking at it from spiritual, neuroscience, all these different perspectives. Because I felt like at that point, well, I wrote these two books and I still fucked up, and I feel like I want to write about this, but I want to write about it with the help of other people,
Mm-hmm.
as basically it's a book about me trying to understand what was going on with me.
Mm-hmm.
So the two books I'm working on now are unrelated to
Mm-hmm.
that, but then I do feel like actually over the last week, less than a week, I've been feeling like there's another book that would coincide with Indie Spiritualist and everything, and it's more about like what's been going on a personal level. So
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, we'll see. But it's my agents are like, Chris, when I get going, I'm like, I'm all in. And
It's a lot.
yeah.
There's a lot. What's your writing practice like?
It's whenever I feel moved to write. So I remember I spoke at my old high school, which I did not have a good experience at
Mm.
whatsoever. I graduated in '96. I was
Oh, me too. Mm-hmm.
oh, nice. So I was like this skateboarding, like I already mentioned, punk rock, hip hop kid, stuck out like a sore thumb. It was in East Haddam, Connecticut.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So East Haddam in '96. So when I said I was getting in fights, on behalf of
Oh,
friends,
yeah.
that
Yeah.
puts it in perspective
Yeah.
why and to this day, I will say that they have evolved a lot of the town, but it is still a very Republican Trump
Yeah.
town. But so they invited me back. This is a couple years ago to go speak, and it was very healing for me in the sense that
Mm.
I almost didn't go because I really I've had such a disdain for that school and the way I was treated. One of the first things that happened was the receptionist when I walked in. It was the same woman who worked there when I went to school, and she
Wow.
pulled me aside and was like, Chris, I want to say I'm really sorry. And I knew what she was sorry
Oh,
for, but I kind of played along. I said, "Oh, what for?" And she said, "You and your friends, like, you were ahead of your time for
oh,
this town, and we didn't understand, and we didn't get like how to handle that. And I know that you suffered a lot of unfair treatment. I mean, there were two occasions where teachers literally like physically manhandled me, and uh,
mm,
so it was very rough. I'm sharing that though because one, that was cathartic, and I did a whole talk to the whole school, which when I say whole school is like 300 kids or
yeah.
something like that. But so then I went and gave a talk to a couple of the writing classes, and one of the teachers asked me, "What's your writing practice?"
Yeah.
And I said, and I'll never forget the look on her face. I said, "I'll go months without writing. I write whenever I feel moved to. After I finished Dead Set
Yeah.
on Living, I didn't write anything for over 8 months, literally." And when I said that, the look on her face, she was mortified because if you're a writer,
Yeah.
you write every day and you
Yay.
write
Let me
300
share.
2,000. Yeah, like fuck that. No, like I learned as a musician, if I'm forcing myself to write a song on guitar, I can't tell you how many guitars I've broken in frustration. And I even broke a laptop once in frustration while trying to force myself to write. So to each their own. Like if it
Yeah.
works for you to write every
Yeah.
day, God bless. Like write
Yeah.
every day. But for me, if it's forced and I don't feel like I need to write, then I'm not going to write. I only write when I feel the need to. I play in bands, which is like something I do is for fun for me, which I love. But when it comes to writing material, luckily I'm not in one of the bands I write the majority of it, but the other band we all contribute. So it's like
Mhm.
luckily it doesn't all fall on me. So if I'm
Mhm.
going through a spell where it's not even that I'm not feeling creative. I don't feel like that, whatever it is flowing
The
through
wave.
me.
Yeah.
I'm not forced to. So, and that's fine. I'll just sit down and practice the songs and enjoy that or go to practice. But yeah, so for writing, it's the same thing. It's like if I feel moved to write, I will write. And if I don't, but then the funny thing is, so I didn't write for 8 months after my last book. And now all of a sudden I'm writing 2 books at the same time. And it's like,
Yeah.
what happens, Chris?
Do
This is
you
what happens.
trust? So one of the things I've heard, there's two things. One, I've heard writers say a lot, and sometimes I experience myself, is that at the end of a session, I'll be like, I don't know where that came from, or
Yeah,
it just comes out, or I don't remember writing it. Like I'll go
sure.
back and read something and say, I didn't even know. I heard Judy Blume say once, she didn't, like someone had asked her in the audience, how did you come up with Deanie? And she's like, honestly, I will read things and not even remember. I don't even know the facts that I put in the book. I don't know
Yeah.
where they came from. Do you have that experience ever?
So with the first 2 books, very much so. It's been tough recently because I've had a bunch of health stuff going on. Both, I won't go into too much detail, but
Yeah.
like a big part of it is my back, and I've had like every exam, blood work, X-ray done, and I just started physical therapy last week. I mention that because running is a big part of my approach to integral well-being. I love running, working out as well, and weights, but I've not been able to do that due to my back in like 3 months, and I've still been eating healthy. I'll have like a treat. You've got to allow yourself, but
Yeah.
overall, I eat healthy, but I have a very slow metabolism. So it's like I've put on weight, and it's like, it's been good in the sense it's forced me to get comfortable with being in my skin, but it's frustrating in the sense that, one, that's a big part of my well-being, and two, my first 2 books, I would say like at least 80% of them were written while I was running. And what I mean by that is, once I go for like anywhere from 8 to 12 mile runs. Once I hit about 4 or 5 miles, my mind is just blank. It's clear, like it's a beautiful thing. And out of nowhere, it's just like a download. It's like I'm writing chapters like in my head, or I'm not, like it's almost
Yeah.
like that stuff in the
That's true.
Matrix
Yeah.
coming down.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sound woo woo. It's not channeled material because it's,
No, no, no. It's
but
not,
like,
that's an extreme. We're not
yes,
there.
no, it's just like the ideas come because
Yes.
I think
Yes.
it's opened.
Your
And I
source
can't,
is open, or this
yeah,
open to
exactly.
your own intuition is
Right.
open. You're not
Yes.
congested with traffic and bills and life.
Right.
Yeah. Got it.
That's totally it. Yeah, it's
Yep.
free. And
Yep.
so I can't tell you how many times I'd get home after those 2 books, profusely sweating over my keyboard, typing
Yeah.
away. And I've had a couple of friends be like, well, why don't you just like record the audio of it? And I'm like, it's not the same. Okay. It's not
Yeah.
the same. But they're right. But at the same
Yeah.
time, it isn't the same. Like I need to
Yeah.
write it.
Yeah.
Um, so anyways, that's how those books worked. The
Okay.
second one, since they were narrative conversations, it was just sitting down having the conversations and then transcribing them in a way that it wasn't Q&A but like engaging a narrative. With these 2 books, I'm co-authoring them with writers, which is nice because I'm also at that point where I feel like on a personal level, in the first 2 books I said everything I had to say just as Chris, the author. But going back to your question about like the trilogy, like over the last week, I've been toying with,
Yeah.
I can feel something
Some
percolating.
things, yeah.
Yeah,
Needs
but
to.
that's down the road because I've got to get these done first. So, but yeah, that's how I work.
It sounds like there's a deep sense of trust, though, that, I mean, this was the other thing I was going to say that I hear a lot with writers is if they're not working on something, there's a fear that I'll have no ideas again,
Yeah.
ever. I've heard lots of people say this, but you
Well,
said
that's
trust yourself.
yes, and I think that's why I have music and writing because I constantly need to be creating
Yes.
something. Like
Yeah.
I pretty much work like 7 days a week. Not by choice. There are times my therapist, will tell me like you need to take more time for you, and she's right. And I do take time for myself, but even on weekends, I get emails from my agents or from events I have coming up and things I have to do. So I never like really get that time off. But yes, there are times where there's a little bit of a lull, and then there's a fear like, oh, I'm becoming obsolete, or I'm not creating, or now what, and so yeah, I certainly experienced that. And also, to be very honest, like in this line of work, I don't have a 9 to 5. I write, I speak, I don't have sick days, I don't have paid time off.
Right.
my livelihood is based on this, which has been tricky for me navigating the fact that I will never sell out in the sense of like, I'm not saying, sure, I'd love to have a New York Times bestselling book, but I will never write in a way or a format where I know like this watered down material will get me to that point.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not me. It never will be.
Yeah.
So, fine if it happens, but if it happens, I don't know, man. I was going to say maybe hell's frozen over, but right
Yeah.
now we're living in even
Yeah.
worse
Right.
times. Stranger things have happened than me writing a best-selling New York Times book, I guess. So yeah.
You said a little bit that with Dead Set on Living, it was different because of these conversations that you had with healers and experts and well-being folks in that field.
Yeah.
Do you think it accomplished or sort of like check the box or scratch the itch that you were feeling by doing it? Like, were you able to make meaning from your relapse and experience by doing that writing?
Yes and no. More yes than no.
Mm-hmm.
What I think that book did for me was it actually provided me at the end with more questions than answers, which was a good thing because it, through talking with some of the people in the book, along with some people I know, really inspired me to begin going to EMDR therapy,
Oh,
which is
yeah. Yeah.
trauma
Yeah.
therapy. And now I do ART, which is accelerated rehabilitation therapy.
Mhm.
It was born out of EMDR. These are two trauma-based therapies.
Yeah.
And I've been in therapy forever, and I think any form of therapy can be beneficial.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I got into the trauma-based therapy that I started to really notice significant shifts in my own real, like honest healing. And, I write about going deep, and I went as deep as I knew how to go, but these other forms, guided by professionals, which I am not, can take you to places like talk about connecting with what Jung called, pardon me, the shadow self and
Yeah.
unconscious. Like
Yeah.
this is stuff that's like really rooting out.
Yeah.
So the beautiful thing about Dead Set for me is that I found and still find it seemed to have helped more other people more than it did me. It definitely
Mm.
helped me. I want to be clear
Okay.
about that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it opened up new questions and new pathways, but I still get so many messages and emails from
Yeah.
people that read it, like family members that like, I didn't understand what my son or daughter was going through. Thank you. It makes more sense. Aunts, uncles, people that like themselves that didn't understand. Like I someone wrote to me and, not to be politically incorrect, but their wording was, I thought I was crazy. And I
Yeah.
recognize now I'm not. And I felt that same way too before I went into my first detox. Like I thought I was literally like insane. And to an extent I am, if I, continue in that behavior. It's like that definition of insanity. Um, but that's been the best, like the most rewarding part of that book for me is that it's helping others. And there's the youth mental health and healing residential facility here in Connecticut. I go into there 3 times a month, and
Oh, good.
yeah, they have all of my books, and I often will teach out of them, but often won't. I'll just go in and we'll do like weird abstract things with the clients there that they don't usually get to do, and try to like make it engaging and fun. And but I'm glad that they have my books there because I've had a lot of the younger, and these are 13 to 18 year olds that I mean legit like have deep scars from suicide attempts or just
Yeah.
self-harm and eating disorders, and overdosed already from drugs and alcohol. And but to know that like these books are, even if nothing more than just planting seeds, I'm super grateful for that. And Dead Set, oddly enough, it seems to be one that really helps them because I think that's the one that's giving them a bit more clarity on what it is they live with versus the first two, which they like because they're a little more raw and graphic. But that third one is definitely the most mature, I would say, of the three books, and the most information based.
I think without having read it, and now I'm definitely going to, not that I wasn't before, but now I know more about what it's what it's at, and going through the books before I knew I was going to be chatting with you. One of the things that really strikes me is that I think when people find meditation, especially in like quick fix culture, we then assume that, well, I'm good now. Everything's going to be great. and I'm gonna have no more issues in my addictions or my marriage or in any realm, relationships, to self or others. And what it sounds like is that this shares that there was already a foundation of some practices that are helpful, and we still are human and have other dimensions, and one does not mean the other. Do you have like people put expectations on you around that,
Oh,
or
yeah. All the time.
yeah,
And I've tried to be clear in all of my books that it's not, spirituality is not some quick fix. Like
yeah,
I've heard it referred to as McMindfulness. I've heard it referred, or the articles that drive me nuts. And I do see it's shifting, but like 5 steps to heal your life or 8 steps and everything. No, bullshit. Like it doesn't work that way. A perfect example. I'll read this to you because I get this a lot, and I won't name any names, but on my social media account, this person's commented recently on a lot of posts I've made, and I don't bother commenting back because I don't have a lot of time for social media. I post, I don't really scroll. I just post, and if someone comments, I'll try to respond if I have time. Um, but this particular person commented on something that, are you familiar with Jeff Brown? He's a
yes, yes,
so
soul, yes,
yeah, I love
yeah,
Jeff. Good
yeah.
dear friend of mine, and we've been on each other's shows. And so, anyways, I
I
just
usually
simply,
have his poem book right here because I read from it a lot, but it's not
yeah,
sitting here right now. Yeah.
yeah, love Jeff. I'm always quoting him, and
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
check in on each other. We're yeah, great
Oh,
dude. We're very much in like we're so
I love that.
simpatico.
That makes me
So,
cry.
oh yeah, he was kind. I wrote an endorsement for one of his last books,
Oh,
and he was going to write an endorsement for one of my, or actually two of his books. I wrote endorsements for. And then the other one he didn't have time, but I don't know. Anyways, so I post this thing completely like just out of fun. There's this thing called fuckology, and they always post these silly little sayings, and sometimes I steal them, and I leave the fuckology part, so I give them credit. But simply stated, every day this is what they're posted. Every day I understand the phrase, quote, "I'm getting too old for this shit" on an even deeper level. So it's silly, made me laugh. And I wrote, "I'll forever be an 11-year-old at heart, but this is some real shit right here." Just playful, whatever. Um, and I wonder if they
did
delete,
they delete it?
or because I post on my personal, I have a personal page and
Oh.
a writer page. But I did want to read the response just
Yeah.
because I think this is part of the problem. Um, and I'll read my response because I do get this a lot, and
Mhm.
uh, oh, they did delete it. And I
Oh,
responded. I never, even if I don't agree, I always respond in a very, very polite. Like I
yeah.
never like, I don't want to argue with anyone. I
Yeah. Yeah.
speak my mind, and I'm just, the last thing I'm making sure is it wasn't on my Instagram account because it was really such a perfect way. Damn. Well, it's not here. Sorry. Well, long story short, essentially they had said something to the effect of, like, don't get trapped in the mind body ego thing, whatever. Like it's not your true self or something like that.
Mm.
Fair enough. But I hear that a lot, and I understand like that there's I get where that's coming from, but I think the non-duality community, some of them have taken this to such an extreme. That's why I mentioned Jeff. I love that he talks about, one of my favorite quotes is something to the effect of, "Yes, it's true we're spiritual beings having a human experience,
Mhm.
but it's also true that we are human beings having
Yes.
a human experience."
Yes.
So you have these people that spirituality can be just as much of an addiction or a means of
Yes.
diversion as
Yes.
drugs, food, sex, shopping. And so, I use that as an example. Or there's also this Buddhist philosopher, Nagarjuna, back from, I don't know, way, way before our time. But he wrote about what's called the two truths. And you'll also find this in Hinduism and
Mhm.
probably every other mystic form of the great wisdom traditions. But what he's saying is the two truths. One truth is that of the ultimate, which is, that which never dies. It's always there. It's the unmanifest. And that of the relative, which is born out of the unmanifest and takes form, which literally everything, from me to the computer to the mic, anything that has form comes out of this unmanifest into manifest. So you have the absolute and the relative. But the point is, he doesn't say one is truer than the other. He makes it a point to say there's two truths and to negate the human experience, which so many people do on the path. And hence, the very popular term spiritual bypassing and Chogyam Trungpa, which it's different, but spiritual materialism, same boat, two different things. It's so important for people to recognize that that's essentially what's happening. And I'm not saying I didn't do that, because I did. I had my materialism phase. I had my bypassing phase. And then it's like, what are you doing? You're just spiritualizing your ego and dressing it up rather than peeling away those layers and like getting down to the core of what's honoring Chris. But what else is, what is giving the energy to Chris?
I think about this all the time because of probably 10-ish years, 10 to 15 years spent on a yoga mat, doing the physical practice of the congestion of emotion and trauma and pain and suffering that was sitting here, was after 20 years of therapy, then moving to the yoga mat, it really helped the embodiment piece. Like the therapy part, I was good with the mind stuff and I could understand. And I was always missing the physical piece. I didn't know that until I started yoga and started crying in yoga and feeling things I had never felt in my body in yoga, and not in headstands, but just laying on the mat quietly, like very simple shapes, and allowing myself time to not strive and do and produce, and giving myself permission to lay there and just be in my body with the breath. These things were happening I didn't understand, and I just wanted more, and that became very delicious. And one of the things that happened was also just the dialogue in the yoga room, and a lot of sort of yoga culture speak, got me to a place where then I was feeling integrated and healthy enough to start to actually look for more of the root.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm just like kind of putting this together while talking to you. I think part of it is the neuroscience. I think part of it is the work in trauma. So I work with an organization called Mind Body Medicine, and we do a lot of trauma-based healing practices, but for all humans. Sometimes it's specific groups, but also there's sort of this low-level trauma in lots of our bodies that we haven't processed. So we get groups together and do this work in schools and senior centers and with all humans, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, now that I have more access to some of the science, I can understand it mentally. I can feel things physically and embody. And the integration part is continuing to study, like continuing to know and educate myself, so that deeper work and that inner work, the piece that we keep going into, it's like it has a little bit more, I want to say, substance from which to then live, so that when my 11-year-old comes in and I feel very activated by one of her behaviors, I'm not like hiding in a corner and meditating, but I'm able to wiggle my toes, look at her in the eyes, go and hold her hand, and suddenly I have access to love.
I love that. Yeah.
And so for me, it was kind of that 3-step, like I said, I'm literally just putting this together now. That's sort of therapy, then yoga. But I've noticed in the past year, I've been reading a lot of, I was looking up his name. I would probably mess it up because I'm terrible at names, but Johan Hari.
Oh yeah. Didn't he do something Scream or
Facing the Scream and Lost Connections?
Yes.
And so much about addiction and recovery and how we're looking at it all wrong because it's the connection.
Right.
And so I'm obsessed with that, and Gabor, all of the mind body medicine practitioners who are talking about trauma, nurse, I love it all. Like I can't get enough of it.
Have you read, not to cut you off, Bessel van der Kolk?
Yes, the body keeps score. Oh yes,
Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, that's my jam.
Stephen Levine too.
The the tiger trauma,
Exactly.
waking the tiger.
Yes. So
Yes.
we're on the same page.
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
So that next layer, I have noticed a little bit of sadness about all those years of bypass.
Yep.
And I'm like, I cannot believe I spent so much time, but I'm working with it.
Yeah. Better late than never.
And I'm in Ayurveda school, and my Ayurveda teacher is a feminine form Ayurveda teacher, but we read Waking the Tiger in Ayurveda school. I mean, it's just full circle. Like
And that
the
was
Ayurveda.
Peter Levine, not Stephen Levine.
Peter.
I should apologize. Stephen's another great author, but passed away.
But for me, having an Ayurveda teacher have this type of nervous system connection and introducing us to some of these classic texts, it just feels full circle. Like it feels like even our world is coming to this place where we've noticed how much the love and light is not necessarily gonna heal all the pieces.
No, it's not. But and that's not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's like
right.
I still meditate pretty much every day just because I know, aside from, the mental clarity it brings, it's good on so many physical levels, blood pressure, stress, that's still important to me. So, it's not like when I'm speaking about spirituality, it's like, don't use malas for mantras or this or that. I don't wear malas anymore just because when I do mantras, I'm at the point where I just do them, and they helped very much. They were wonderful training wheels. And
yes,
now,
training wheels.
Yeah. I found now though, and there's again, nothing wrong with them at all. For me, when I wear them, there's twofold. Either one, I caught myself as wearing them just because I wanted to wear them because they're malas. The only time I wear malas now are I have a set of skull malas, and a lot of my tattoos are skulls, and people think it's because it's skulls are tough or whatever. And of course they are, they're rad. But I have so much skull iconography around my apartment on my body.
Yeah, you can see a little behind you.
It's a reminder to me though of the impermanence of this gift of life. And even though it doesn't feel like a gift a lot of the time, this too will end. And I don't know what happens after this body. I'm not even going to conjecture it. Incarnation, heaven, hell, whatever. I don't know. But what I know is I'm alive today, and things like skulls that seemingly, to other people might be like, oh, it's just evil. No, they're the polar opposite. They really are reminders of gratitude and living in the moment. And today I'm alive. Today I'm not, just rotting flesh, whether, I'm 6 feet deep or incinerated or planted and become a tree or whatever happens to me. So.
And what about, so I read in the book also that you sing kirtan.
Not sing, I play drums.
You play drums. Okay, got it.
So I haven't done that in a while, but it's with my friend Alana Kaivalia.
I love Alana. She's the best.
Yes. I was just thinking this morning, I haven't talked to her. We go through phases because we're both so busy.
Yeah.
We won't talk for months, and then we'll talk, and it's like, she's one of those friends I feel like I talked to her yesterday. And so we did this thing for a while, and we haven't done it in years. But we played at Kripalu a few times, played at Yoga Journal Conference, and we did mashups of contemporary songs and ancient chants. And I would play an actual just a smaller scale version of my drum set instead of tablas, and she'd play her harmonium, and we just took a different approach, and people really enjoyed it. And we recorded an EP, but I wasn't overall happy with it. So I mean, it's out there somewhere, but
we'll find it.
Yeah, it's there. I mean, I know I have a copy of it. I think it is online somewhere. I just don't know where. But I love Alana. She's another one. We connected just because we were both coming from that same space of she was fed up with the yoga community. I don't want to make a blanket statement or speak on her behalf. She was frustrated with the direction it's going, and she's been very outspoken about it.
I remember that phase and sort of being like, yes, and you have a big audience, so it feels great for you to say that. Sean Korn says, the depth of what Sean Korn says and has been saying for a long time, sort of cheering from the sidelines. I feel like Alana is one of those people also. So people should definitely, I'll link to her also so that they can see what she's doing.
Yeah, please do.
Because
She's always got
it's really
great
important.
content.
Yeah. And she used to come to DC a lot because there was a lot of Jiva people here
Oh,
before,
cool. Yeah.
before I think a lot of people stopped.
The-
Anyway, that's again, a whole nother story. Okay. So what is there, this is what I want to do before I have you read. I'm going to pull a fast one on you. On page 206, you have all the questions that you like to ask people. So I was going to ask you, what is one of the most beautiful experiences you've ever had?
Oh, wow. I asked that, huh? That's a pretty good one. I think it is, I think I wrote about it in Everything Mind. Like something you haven't talked about for you. And I'm sure there have been many. Maybe, all right. So maybe it's not one, it's up there. I had just recently lost one of my dearest friends. It was earlier this year, and that was on the heels of losing another friend just a few weeks before that, and then almost, it was right around the same time of the anniversary of another dear friend of mine. You may know Kate Bartolotta. A lot of people. She was friends with Alana. She was an incredible writer from here in Connecticut, and wrote for Elephant Journal and Huffington Post, and was just one of the most beautiful people I know, or knew. Still know. She's still with me, but it's all culminated, and my fiance surprised me with taking me to goat therapy. I had no idea this is even a thing. She didn't tell me where we were going, what we were doing. And we get to this place. I'm like, oh, it smells like shit out here, in farmland. And we get to this place, and I'm like, what is going on? And she's like, we're going to do some goat therapy. And it was just, she wanted to like cheer me up. And we got to, first of all, go in and hang out with the goats, which was awesome. And then you go into a barn and you just sit and like you get to hold the goats and, cuddle with them. And it was, especially at that time, such a beautiful experience. So now a flood of things are coming. Like just yesterday, or 2 days ago, we were visiting my friends rehabbing a possum, and just being there with that possum. They involve animals usually because I love animals. But yeah, so I'll go with that one. Of course, I'll think of more.
Of course,
after,
and then you'd be like, "Why didn't I say that one?" That's it.
But that was special and meaningful, and yeah, that was a great one.
What's really interesting to me is that you started with some of the painful memories and just remembering people in your life who were passing and sort of what that means. Even if we are comfortable, as much as humans can be comfortable with death in terms of reading about it and practicing, a lot of Buddhist meditation is around, right? Like
of course,
death. And so this is a practice that is, I'm sure, a part of your life. It's part of my life. And like, period. When people die, I still feel sad.
Of course.
So like, again, two sides. But this is really interesting as you started with that and then went into the beauty. And yesterday I was with a group of college seniors, and we started our chat with roses and thorns. And pretty much every single kid in the room, the rose and the thorn were like two sides of the same coin, right?
That's right.
And we talked about that at the end, how powerful, like being able to hold both, how powerful that really is in our life. Because when we get to the essence of those beautiful moments or the hard moments, there's like sort of that expansion around it, which includes the full spectrum. Right?
I have to say the grace and grit are two sides of the same coin, so I love that. Yes. The rose and the thorn, same thing. Exactly.
Okay. One more question.
Sure.
What do you think is your greatest contribution to humanity? One more easy, like.
This is how self-deprecating. The first thing I think of is like the minute I die and like leave everyone without my mischief. That's literally the first thing that came to mind. So that's where
I love
I'm
it.
at.
There you go. Yeah.
But I mean, no, I hope that, I like to know the fact that if we do not blow ourselves up, with whomever, you know, is
Mm.
in charge of the country, and this terrifying issue that is happening with global warming, that, you know, I know some people say we're beyond turning back, and some people say we can make it. What I like to think is that even after I'm long gone, hopefully some of these books or some things I've written will still be around and find their way into hands of people that they can help. Um, you know, they might be a little dated, but maybe the information I try to write in a way that the main point I'm getting across is the raw, vulnerable authenticity of the experience. And I read writers from, you know, the 60s, 50s, 40s, and that I love that because that's what comes through to me. So I guess, you know, it's a cliche answer, but truly, I think, or I hope that even if that's not my greatest contribution in this moment, that as, for lack of a better word, legacy, whatever,
Mhm.
I don't give a fuck. Take my name off the books and just leave like the books
Right.
out there. It's not about me. It's about, I hope that something that I've created in this world
Yes.
leave a lasting impression that can
Yeah.
continue to help others, regardless of whether I die today or in 40 years. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I love the idea of your music being that also, the people who come to your shows or listen and
yeah, I mean, you know, I was gonna say that, but and to be honest, music has saved my life on many
yeah,
times, and not the typical music you'd think. And
yeah,
I've had people who've really appreciated the music I've written. It's never reached anywhere near the recognition the books I've written
yeah,
have, but yeah, that too. I mean, you never know. The two bands
yeah.
I'm doing right now both have a lot of great members. We know tons of people, so who knows, like how widespread that stuff will get going when we record it. So yeah, that would be nice too, because music is, of course, just as important as literature, just as important as art and film. You know, it's all like inspiring and healing, and well, not all. You know, some of it's complete garbage, but it's all subjective. So I own that. That's my judgmental prickness. But no, really, like it all affects people in different
Yeah.
ways, and can literally like have the ability to save lives and or change lives, inspire lives. And
Mhm,
that's the most beautiful thing to me, is when something
mhm.
inspires someone to be creative in their own life or to change something in their own life. Like, it doesn't matter the means, but whatever it is, like, that's just so cool to me.
Do you think that you have to go through really sort of dark nights of the soul type struggles to be a good teacher?
No, I think it. So what I know, let's speaking addiction and recovery wise, specifically, one thing I love is like people use the word rock bottoms. You need to hit a rock bottom to change. When
Mm,
people think of rock bottom, like for me, rock bottom, like I've hit rock bottoms and then the bottom gave out and I just went down and down, and to the
yeah.
point where, like I said, that last relapse, like I was intubated because I couldn't breathe anymore. I had tubes breathing for me, and
Mm,
even if I came out of it, the doctors didn't know how much, if any, of my brain capacity would still be there. But rock bottoms don't have to be that. They can be like something seemingly to someone like me who's gone
mhm,
that low, some life thing that took them, like say I'm down here, theirs can be like right here, and that can be
mhm.
enough. Now, I think we all have, you know, to be human, we all have our pain, we all have our struggles. And I do think that not just getting through them, but learning from them,
Mm,
healing from them, owning and reintegrating them so that they're not lingering in the unconscious.
yeah.
I think if you're doing that work and coming out of the other side, I think that's what makes a great teacher. Because yes, man, pain and suffering, like Ram Dass says, one of my favorite quotes from him is, suffering is the sandpaper of our incarnation. It does its job of shaping us.
Mm,
Boy, oh boy, is that, you know, some
mhm,
true shit right there. So
mm.
no, it's just like, do you think someone needs to be in recovery to be, you know, a recovery therapist or
There,
a
yeah,
recovery counselor?
yeah,
No, but I understand why people
yeah.
are hesitant to talk to them more than those who've gone through it, because that is a kind of pain that unless you have experienced it, you'll never understand. And that's why, people that still don't understand addiction and talk shit and like it's a moral deficiency and this and that, I can't entirely blame them. Yes, it's ignorant, but at the
Mhm.
same time, I get it because like you haven't been there. But I guarantee you, if you experience like a tenth of what I have experienced in my life, the pain, the literal hell like I have gone through because of it, you would never ever say that again.
Mhm.
Um, so but just to come back around, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean like say someone's a therapist who hasn't experienced it. I know therapists that were inspired because a family member was
Yeah. Right.
addicted, and even
Right.
if they lived or died, like they lived because it's a family illness.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like um, so yeah, no, I don't think that you have to have like the darkest of dark nights of the soul, but I think we all have them to a certain extent. But
Yeah.
my main point is, what do you do with that? And
Yeah.
that's what creates a good teacher.
And one of the questions I have about it often when I started digging in a little bit to people's backgrounds and reading books and listening to them and their stories was, oh, this teacher that I respect or listen to or love, like they've talked about this thing or they've talked about this thing. And so I think probably attracted to that honesty and authenticity about it.
Yeah.
But not necessarily does everybody need to share everything in that sort of public
Right.
like vomit way that's uncomfortable. So it's just a question I always like to think about with is where people come at with that, because so many great teachers write and talk and share so much about the inner life of what it means to be human. And a lot of time there's threads on whether it's abuse or addiction or mental illness or mental wellness, all the different versions.
Right. And I agree. Some people
Yeah.
are drawn to that. Some
Yeah.
people are like, okay, enough's enough. But
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
it's like, I don't really like the watered down spirituality stuff. I've never like
Yeah.
watered down anything,
Yeah.
but
Right. Right.
it can help people. Jeff Brown has also made the case so that he had a friend who went to, got involved in that very, white, like this is going to 5 quick step stuff and ended up laying aside Western medicine and psychotherapy and really believed it, bought into the hype, and ended up committing suicide
Yeah.
because it didn't fix their lives. And now
Yeah.
that's an extreme case, but
Right. Right.
so again, it's all subjective and
Questions,
yeah,
discernment.
yes, yes.
Okay. Any final things that you'd like to say? Most of our audience are very hardworking, very loving DC women
Awesome.
who are trying to learn and do well for themselves and their families and manage their stress.
Well, first of all, completely unrelated, as I told you earlier, I think before we recorded, I want to thank DC period
Mm.
for the music scene because it's been so heavily influential in my writing. One of my bands right now, like when people ask what does it sound like, it's like it's kind of DC meets, like quicksand. Like anyway, so thank you, DC, for that. I have to get that out there. Respect where it's due. Not being a female, it's tough. I mean, 50% of the people I love are female. My mother, my nieces, my fiance, I mean, my cousins, my aunts. So it's, you know, first of all, I guess if you are there and you're working on yourself in such a climate as DC, which you mentioned is
Mhm.
it's different there, and understandably so. I have nothing but respect for you, and I thank you for taking the time out of your life to work on yourself because we always need that. But I feel like, and not to be cliche, but really now more than ever, we need this, and the outer stuff is so important, but it really begins on the inside. I do believe that. And that's not to say that we can't make significant change on the outside while working on the inside. Like we'll never be fully healed individuals. It's just
Yeah.
not possible. We're human. We'll heal one thing and then another tragedy will come up and we'll have to work through that. But taking the time, whether it's yoga, whether it's meditation, whether it's a combination of those things, therapy, whatever, taking the time to go in and reown and reintegrate and heal through that while doing whatever it is you feel moved to do. And when I say you, not you specifically, any
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
listeners,
Yeah.
to make effective change in the world, my not that I often wear a hat. My hat is off to you. I thank you for that. That goes for males as well. But I appreciate that your audience is predominantly female, as you mentioned. So I apologize. I'm stumbling over my words because I've never, that I can recall, been asked to address like specifically to women. But all I can say is a lot of love because with everything that's going on from the Me Too movement to just being a woman in general and the hardships that women continue to face, the inequality that females continue to face, the thing that came up with the U.S. Women's soccer team not that long ago, just one of many examples of pay. And it breaks my heart because so we have different genders, but that makes one less, valuable. And the same could be said for other races and things I mentioned earlier. Like it all breaks my heart, and not in a Pollyannish way, but I do believe chaos can precipitate great change. So while right now things are triumphantly fucking weird and bizarro like world, I think that if we continue unifying and coming together, like we can actually see that effective change where women's rights continue to grow and the pay gap, there is no more pay gap. And again, not just for females, but for people of all sexual orientations and religions. And so anyways, I'm giving a very long-winded answer here because I want to make sure I'm being clear. But all that to say, thank you for taking the time to be yourself, to work on yourself. And if you've made it this far in our conversation, God bless your heart. I would have turned this shit up. No, I'm just kidding. Not because of you, because of me. But,
okay, so to close, I like people to read some of their words. So
I thought you were going to forget.
149.
Page 149.
Yeah, right. It's the first page of chapter 39, Ignition.
149, Ignition. Oh yes, the Neil Gaiman quote. I love Neil Gaiman. So what would you like me to read here?
Will you just read this page? It's not too much.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fine. So Ignition, which is the name of a song from a band called Threadbare. So again, that's one thing about Indie Spiritualist. The chapter names are not all obscure, but song titles from bands that I like growing up. So not a lot of people know that.
Cool.
So epigraph, say nevermore, said Shadow. Fuck you, said the Raven. And that's from Neil Gaiman, American Gods. A sadness wells up inside of me, no rhyme or reason. I sit down, cross my legs, place my hands in my lap, and close my eyes. I sit with this sadness, both personal and impersonal, and hold the pain in my heart. I sit with this sadness as an offering to anyone who is struggling. I know what it means to struggle, to experience pain and sadness. I know it intimately. I sit with this sadness, and as I do, it acknowledges my presence. It knows I'm neither judging nor asking it to leave. Rather, I just simply want to be with it in the moment. The sadness becomes awareness, and a sense of compassion begins to arise. It sees that I need it, so the sadness slowly begins to fill my heart with warmth. The cells in my hands ignite with a tingling sensation that slowly moves simultaneously up my arms, into my chest, throat, and head, as well as down into my stomach, legs, and feet. The sadness is still there, but it's much quieter now. It knows that I'm there with it, my arms and heart completely open to it. That was a piece, as I'm reading it, I realize is deeply inspired by Charles Bukowski, the style of it.
I wanted to keep going. I want you to read to me. No, I mean, no, not really. Like you're good, but I want to keep listening. I want you to, you have a beautiful reading voice and
thanks.
And I just want to keep hearing that.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that. Cause like I said, I don't know if we talked about in the interview, but I did get the audio right. So I'm doing the audiobook for these. And, so you will be able to hear more of that.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Anyways, oddly they passed up having me read Dead Set on Living. They had some professional come in who did a fine job. He also did Mark Manson's it's super popular, like something has the word fuck in it.
Fuck in it. I don't give a fuck or don't give a fuck. Whatever. Yeah.
But I'm like, all right, well, if he did that book, he can do mine, I guess. But yeah, I was like, I can't read my own
I'm
audio.
so annoying about audiobooks. If it's not read by the author, I won't listen to it.
Yeah, and same here. Like I don't do a lot of audiobooks because I
Yeah.
prefer to read,
Yeah,
but
same.
I travel, and when I travel, it's audiobooks, and I
Yeah,
want to hear, except for
always.
Eckhart Tolle. Love
Oh,
Tolle, but that like
yeah.
thing he does, it's like, but
Well,
anyways.
you get to hear like intimately
But you're right.
the
Yeah.
real what you get to know them in a
Yeah,
way that you don't with all those little things that come.
I agree.
I look for them because I'm like, oh, there's the human, you
Yes.
know?
Very well said. Very well said.
Chris, thank you. You're the
Thank you.
bestest. I hope to give you a hug in real life in
Yes,
Connecticut or come
please.
to DC.
Yeah, one or the other. I'm sure my band will be playing out there at some point. But next
Yeah,
time you're going to be in the area with sometime, pardon me, please let me know ahead of time and
I
we'll get
will.
tea, we'll meet up. It'll be wonderful. We can talk shit all day long. And I don't mean that in a negative way. We'll get
In a
out.
positive way.
Yes.
Where can everybody find you? I want to make sure we say your website so they know.
Yeah, indiespiritualist.com and all the bullshit is connected to there. And oh, I was going to say, when you were talking about buying Dead Set on Living, buy it off eBay. Buy used, man. Like I
Got
tell people, fuck it, steal it. If you can find it and download it, go for it. But eBay, you can find these shits for like $4 or $5 shipped. And I mean, like, and I'll be honest, if it's a dear friend of mine's book that's coming out, I will buy it on Amazon when it comes out because I
Yeah.
know it's important to
Yeah,
support.
the pre-order. Yeah.
All these books have been out for a while. You can find all of them on eBay, and I mean literally shipped for under $5, like $3.50, $4. And that's where I buy most of my books is off Amazon because like you can find them in good condition.
Yeah.
Just repurposing the book instead. Though I will say, Dead Set on Living, I had to find a quote or a blurb from it this morning. It's only $6.73 on Amazon right now,
Oh, yeah,
brand new.
yeah,
And if you have Prime shipping, it's free in 2 days.
yeah,
Otherwise, yeah, if you're interested or your listeners are, eBay,
yeah.
highly recommend. Save yourself the money.
Thank you, Chris. You're
Thank
such a
you.
doll.
I appreciate it. We will give hugs in
Yes, I
person.
know. I'm like,
And I look
ah.
forward. Yeah,
Okay.
I can't wait.
Thanks, bud. Good
Yep.
luck with everything.
Thank you very much. Take
Take
care. Have a
care.
great rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.